Good morning, YouTubers. Welcome once again to the eastern wing of the Stink Bug Works. You know the whole description. You know, you're going to get unedited, unscripted, unrehearsed, unwarranted videos. Anyway, I thought I'd give you a little update here on the shrimp boat. I'm going to come up with a better name. Anyway, after much thought and consideration, I've decided to put this motor in this boat. It's going to fit. And so they got me to thinking, and it says, here's the reason I'm going to give you a little talk today is it's all about planning, pre-planning. And before you start throwing any glue on, you got to think about things. You got to test fit parts. So here's what I'm talking about today. In this motor mount, they give you ovaled mounting screws and a oval hole here for the motor so that you can move the motor up and down. Well, I got to looking, and you got to pay real close attention to where your motor is, because it's either going to crash on the top deck and you'll have to build some sort of canopy bubble, or it'll crash on the bottom. So you have to think about things like that. And again, mounting your motor, I had to massage the screw holes ever so slightly to get them to work. If this motor mount's already glued in place, that becomes a problem. So the best time to address these, little design issues is before you glue anything together, before you put a finish on it. While it's still in its rough stage, think and pre-plan and think how these things are going to go. For example, I originally, when I first bolted this up, I had the motor on the other side, and I'm looking at it here and going, oh, wait a minute. The motor leads are coming off right in the middle of the hull where they're going to be in the way. So from the get-go then, I flipped the motor, and because of the weirdness of this cooling coil, the cooling hose, I've actually tested it with a piece of hose, is going to come out here through there, and it's going to have to go over to this side. So a lot of it is pre-planning will save you time and trouble in the future. I'm thinking about the cooling runs, and I haven't even glued a single part together. And speaking of which, I added some holes to my parts, just because I want this as light as I can. I'm going to go with a small motor. This is an 1105 2Y. It has a KV of, God, what is it? Is this the one that's 4550? Yeah, I think this is a 4550 KV, because this was its daddy, and it was a 2Y, and it was a 4900 KV. So yeah, this is probably the 4550 KV, which means in order to keep this thing light, this very well may become a 2S boat. And so I may just build this to run on 2S. That way I can run something bigger than a 25 millimeter prop. Although a 25 millimeter prop spinning at 35,000 RPM has a really nice sound. But I digress. So that's what I wanted to talk about. When you're building a kit, pre-plan everything, test fit everything, make sure it works. For example, if you read the plans, plans as they are, you can actually go online and find these photos. You'll find that this piece here, one of the sponson pieces, is actually bent, as is the sponson bottom. It gets bent as well. So my plan for these is I'm going to sand what will eventually be the inside surface down as much as I can to shave a couple of nanograms off of it, and then soak the thing in ammonia, put it up on my little magnetic table, and put the curve in it, and then let it dry. And then once it's dry, it will hold that curve, and then when I'm gluing everything together, and clamping things in place, the clamps aren't going to have to be bending the wood and holding the joint tight. They can be mainly holding the joint tight because the wood will be pre-bent. So that's some of my thinking on this build. I had to go with a coil on this thing because the distance from the end bell mounting screw, where my thumb is right here, to these holes in the case is pretty short, and nobody makes a cooling jacket that short. And yeah, I could turn one down on the lathe and yada, 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 and make one, but this is going to be just as good. It'll be just as good, trust me. Copper is an excellent conductor of heat, even better than aluminum. So, yeah, cooling runs are going to be kind of convoluted, and then this will go off to the speed control and out. So I'm thinking this is going to be about a 35 to 40 amp setup. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for speed control just yet. I might just go with, something tried and true, but I do want the lightest one I can get my hands on. So I'll do some shopping. Maybe some of you can jump in and say, use this speed control. Okay, I've covered just about everything I felt like talking about this morning. So until next time, boys and girls, jet out.